Thank you all for talking water quality. Okay, so now the CHNEP Monitoring Strategy updates by Sarina Barnard. I'm sorry we went a little over, but the purpose of this is to guide the committee through updates made to the CHNEP Monitoring Strategy Sections based on the 2025 update to the CCMP and gather additional comments or consensus on the edits made. This relates to water quality improvement action 1 to support a comprehensive and coordinated water quality monitoring and assessment strategy. Can everyone hear me okay? Maybe go up to the podium, or if you need your thing. But we do have it visible up there. So. Get the clicker. Oh, Sarina, you got it. Okay, so I'll stand up, maybe that'll be easier. Yeah, let me put a speaker. So EPA requires national estuary programs to have a comprehensive conservation management plan, or CCMP. And CCMPs are living documents for adaptive management so that new data and results can be incorporated into the focus of the program. The monitoring strategy is a document created to support the CCMP and track and detect changes and or improvements within the area. So sections in the monitoring strategy mimic those in the CCMP, for example, water quality improvement, hydrologic restoration, and fish and wildlife habitat protection. And so as you all probably remember, we just updated the CCMP in this year in 2025. And so CHNEP staff have drafted changes to the monitoring strategy to reflect those updates. Okay, so the monitoring strategy asks, what are the most pressing water quality, wildlife, habitat, etc. questions we need to address right now? And how do we collectively want to track and monitor those changes over time? And so the purpose of the monitoring strategy is to describe how synthesis of data from ongoing water quality, fish and wildlife, and habitat monitoring programs can assist in evaluation of the effectiveness of CCMP actions, as well as to provide the data necessary to routinely track trends and assess the environmental health of the CHNEP study area, and to ID data gaps and additional funding needed for monitoring activities and filling data gaps. And so you all should have the monitoring strategy in your packets. And so we will start with a few of the, okay. First I'll go over just the requirements. EPA states that the monitoring strategy must include performance measures for actions and activities. And those actions and activities are what we all just drafted and agreed on in the new CCMP. Data that the NEP and partners are collecting for each performance measure. The party or parties responsible for collecting the data, the frequency of collecting and reporting the monitoring data, how the data is stored, shared, reported, and used, data gaps or additional funding needed to fill those data gaps, and sources of funding. So a few general updates were made in the introductory section on pages 1 and 2. We updated the year to show 2025 and updated the CHNEP office address on the title page. On page 2, we added a reference to the more recent Charlotte Harbor Aquatic Preserve seagrass propeller scar mapping study from 2022. And then if you skip all the way to page 2022, we updated the acronym table. And we updated the references to include the CCHMN Standard Operating Procedure 2023 updates, the CHNEP 2025 Comprehensive Conservation Management Plan, the Medina et al. 2025 Water Quality Trends paper, the Morton 2022 Propeller Scar Mapping paper, and the Tomasco et al. 2023 Red Tide paper. So there's been a lot of new scientific articles since we last updated this, so all of that has now been reflected in the references. So moving on to the water quality improvement section, this is on pages 3 through 10. Starting with the table on page 4, we added funding sources for each parameter based on the updated 2025 CCMP. So when we updated the CCMP, we gathered information from you all and the other committees on funding sources, responsible parties for each of those actions. And so now those are just reflected in the monitoring strategy. So again, we also updated the responsible entities for each parameter. We added references to the Medina et al. 2025 water quality trends paper, and we removed references to old tools that are no longer being used, such as the GIS HAB scope and the water clarity report card, which we just discussed. And then we added references to new water atlas tools, such as the numeric nutrient criteria or NNC calculator and other water atlas tools. And then generally the text in the water quality improvement section has been updated to reflect the updated CCMP. Please let me know if I'm going too fast. So moving to the hydrologic restoration section, this is pages 10 through 14. We changed hydrological to hydrologic throughout this section. This is to match the CCMP, which was updated with this change based on input from the committees. In the table in this section, we added funding sources for each parameter and updated the responsible entities for each parameter. We removed references to the old SwiftMud database, the Water Management Information System, and replaced it with the new SwiftMud Environmental Data Portal, or EDP. Okay. And then moving to the fish, wildlife, and habitat protection section, pages 14 through 21. In the table, we added funding sources for each parameter and updated the responsible entities. We added references to the CHNEP Water Atlas tools. On page 16, we added a new parameter, mangrove and salt marsh habitat acreage, to reflect our new CCMP activity 1.3 to protect, monitor, and restore shoreline habitats, including mangroves and salt marshes, and to establish status and trends as a biological indicator of ecosystem health. We also added the new CCMP activity 2.3 to the appropriate parameter. Activity 2.3 is to implement the Habitat Restoration Needs Plan and facilitating habitat restoration and migration in current and future scenarios. So we added this activity to the acres of acquired and or restored conservation lands parameter. And in this section, we also removed references to old tools that are no longer being used, such as the Florida Invasive Species Partnership Early Detection and Distribution Mapping System, or FISP EDS maps. And we replaced this with new tools such as the FWC Florida Landscape Assessment Model, the Water Management District Statewide Land Use Land Cover Maps, and the Florida Natural Areas Inventories Geodatabase. We also added references to new and additional seagrass monitoring programs, such as Eyes on Seagrass. And then finally, we identified the frequency of updated seagrass coverage data in the soft mud region as a data gap for fish and wildlife habitat monitoring. So let me know if you have any questions or if you'd like me to go back to any of these slides.
Quick comment. One thing I would recommend, because this, just to be clear, this is for the benefit of EPA activists, right? Okay. So I think it's important to really super emphasize those pieces like CCHNEP are basically designed and executed in compliance with the requirements that Florida has put forth for 3D and 6.5B listing and assessment requirements, because that's what EPA is going to care about a lot, right? That what we're doing is directly in support of and is the only source of that in the Charlotte Harbor area, or at least for Charlotte Harbor proper, in the Bay proper, for that assessment code. And so that tying that into Clean Water Act requirements that EPA has to fulfill, I think is really going to be the big overarching piece of this. So there's a section in here that kind of talks about CCHNEP program. We probably just slip something in there alongside that. But I think emphasizing that is going to be.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Thank you.
I got another comment. When we were discussing the CCMP as a group, and this was several last year, we were mentioning that the fact that it says that a lot of the references on oyster reef acreage and oyster renovation and oyster. And I wanted to expand a little more because there's a lot of initiatives that are going and using other clams, some other feature that so I said to expand it to shellfish instead of just narrow it down to oysters. Because again, there's a lot of initiatives throughout Southwest Florida that are using shellfish, clams.
Right.
Well, that was my only comment. Not to limit it to oysters only, expand a little bit.
And are you specifically referencing the parameter in the table? Okay.
Yeah, for the wildlife, table 3. And the
Oyster reef acreage changed to shellfish.
Yeah, it just the term oyster only expanded to shellfish. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with that. By all means, comments now.
We did do that in the season.
I can remember that.
Yeah.
Hydrobiological under responsible entities, maybe making a note that as I know I think it's the one that administers it, but it's individual entities that are collecting it. And if we're going to highlight things like the mosaic stuff and water figures that may not necessarily be independent, but to provide information towards understanding compliance with water criteria, maybe let's stick that into the table. I guess the table 1.
Table 1. And what do you want added? Sorry.
The hydrobiological monitoring program. So those water withdrawal monitoring requirements, like there's data that East River Water Authority comes to do that I don't, and again, it's good, but I don't think it all is going to depend, but they're at least using it for understanding in terms of water streams. One board that's similarly very
And so just to be clear, it's table 1, the very first parameter, the 15 water quality parameters, and adding text about the hydrobiological monitoring program under responsible entities.
I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
It really quick. First, it's a name thing. On page 7 and page 22 for Charlotte Harbor Aquatic Preserves, it's under preserves. We have more on preserves. So we can add an S at the end of that. And then one thing that I noticed with the seagrass monitoring under, you mentioned that it's just let me try to find the language, but basically the FDEP deer staff monitors quarterly. You have Caloosahatchee, but they also monitor sites in Matlacha Pass and San Carlos Bay quarterly, in addition to Caloosahatchee. Matlacha Pass and San Carlos Bay.
And San Carlos Bay are quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I can't, I'll try to find that page for you.
But it's under the seagrass monitoring section.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So now we have 5 edits. Right,
Page 19.
page 19.
Yeah.
I have one very minor edit as well. On page 13, sharing, reporting, and use of data refers to South Florida Water Management District DB Hydro. It's this year was retired and it's become DB Hydro Insights. It's just supposed to be more user friendly.
So change DB Hydro to DB Hydro Insights.
Yes.
Okay. Great, I will put those 6 edits. They are.
Okay, so I will ask if the members have any further questions or would like to suggest any more edits. So with that in mind, I will review. Thank you for writing them. Thank you for the notes. So, okay, so here's the edits. We have add supports 303D listing process. We have a change oysters to a more general shellfish and include clams. This is on table 3. We have responsible parties under biological monitoring. So we'll have add hydro.
Could I make an amendment for that change? Because later on, after reading this stuff,
Mhm.
there's a lot of implication with water management industry. If GCU is doing some stuff with oysters, why don't we add additional shellfish?
Add instead of
So add.
change.
Okay,
So just to add additional shellfish. So that way we don't exclude the clams,
okay,
but you still keep the oysters in there.
okay.
Okay, so
And that would
oysters
be-
to add shellfish.
That will not make any harm to the language of that.
Okay,
Got it.
so add oysters to add shellfish.
Yeah.
Okay, to include clams. Okay. Responsible parties under biological monitoring, add hydrobiological monitoring program under table 1. And we have the acronym PRWSP. All right.
Peace River, Minnesota Water Supply Authority, was that, I had a question mark on that, if they were one of the entities.
It'd be through the HB. The one that they're doing is part of their ecological.
So do you think we need to name them as a responsible party then?
I mean,
We
maybe
typically
not
name,
just use the HB umbrella, just be like all, because like Punta Gorda also puts a bunch of samples under that umbrella as well.
HB and
Or hydrobiological monitoring. It's all that, it's
Yeah.
that's basically the term for all the monitoring that water withdrawal entities have to do.
Okay, so we're gonna add the HBMP entities.
Add HVMP entities to table 1. Change preserve to preserves under Charlotte Harbor Aquatic Reserves on page 7 and 22. I'll add anywhere it says preserve instead of preserves, add it. And then under seagrass monitoring, add Matlacha Pass and San Carlos Bay are quarterly measured by FDEP deer. And then page 13, DB Hydro will be changed to DB Hydro Insights. Are there any more edits? So did that capture it all?
I have one more.
Okay.
Great.
On page 6, the red, private house area. Maybe add like, it gives users are sampling and monitoring food current solar house. And then also the money out to people right now around there and let's try to drop this.
So you'd like to be added as a responsible party,
Yeah.
City of
you
Cape
can-
Coral.
Yeah, this together like a summer report.
Okay. Again, where was that you want to be added? The responsible parties,
Responsible and yeah.
or responsible entities on page 6.1. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Some wonderful edits. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to look it over.
All right.
All right. So with those edits,
With those edits, do we have a, this isn't good, this is good. Do we have a motion to approve? Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you. All right, so I will call for a vote to approve. Those in favor, please say yes.
Yeah.
Are there any noes or abstentions? All right. Like your monitoring strategy has been passed. Good job, Sarina. Thank you. Sorry we cut you off on time a little bit.